Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the June 28th, 2017 edition of The Breast There Is, The Breast There Was, and The Breast There Ever Will Be Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Mikey B. And this week in the WWE, the two shows were less interesting as a whole compared to last week, but there were a few interesting moments on each show. Beginning with Monday Night Raw, Roman Reigns opened the show by announcing that he accepts the ambulance match against Braun Strowman at the upcoming pay-per-view Great Balls of Fire. I don't think anyone ever questioned his participation in this proposed match, but they have to fill 3 hours, so we get segments like this sometimes to make obvious announcements. And something I have to mention before we continue on with the wrestling storylines is the title of WWE's next pay-per-view, Great Balls of Fire. This is the first time that a pay-per-view has this title, and much to my surprise, they are using the famous song entitled Great Balls of Fire by Jerry Lee Lewis. Now, while you may have heard this famous song before, there's a good chance that you don't know Jerry Lee Lewis, or at least anything about him. Besides having tremendous knowledge on wrestling, I also know just as much about music, specifically rock and roll. Lewis was one of the pioneer musicians of rock and roll in the late 1950s, making hits at the same time as Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, Ray Charles, and Little Richard, to name a few. And his songs were major hits at the time, too. His career, however, took a major downward spiral not long after it started because of some news that leaked to the media. It turns out that when Jerry Lee Lewis was 23 years old, he married his 13-year-old first cousin once removed. A first cousin once removed means a first cousin of either your mother or father. And while I don't condone this personal choice by him, I don't want to turn this into a judgmental bashing of Lewis. It is worth noting that the WWE since the Attitude Era has consciously moved towards the PG era with family-friendly, wholesome programming. And while one could argue that Jerry Lee Lewis is family-friendly after this scandal, I don't think this is what the WWE has in mind with its wholesome program now. Maybe they figure that either this scandal is so old that nobody will remember it, or Lewis. This famous song was probably not too expensive for its rights to be used by the company, considering how much Lewis's career was tarnished following this. Anyways, a very questionable decision by the company, especially now that you know all these facts. Moving back to the action on Raw, after weeks of promos by Goldust and R-Truth, they were finally set to have a match, which resulted in a no contest after Goldust attacked Truth before the bell rang. I must say that Goldust cuts some of the best promos in the company. A seasoned vet with a wrestling lineage, I really hope that they give him some title shots in the near future, even if it's for the Intercontinental title. His character is good enough and his abilities in the ring are strong enough that he could easily have a run with the title. Speaking of someone who cuts a good promo, who cuts a great promo, Enzo Amore and Big Cass had a confrontation in the ring following the admission by Big Cass last week that he was the one who attacked Enzo and that he was finished with Enzo. Enzo Amore is definitely one of the finest wrestling personalities when it comes to handling the mic. Week after week, he drew people in with his showmanship. This week on Raw, particularly, Enzo delivered an impassioned speech to Big Cass. It felt very real to me, and I'm sure to the rest of the audience as well, as he poured his heart out and didn't believe that their partnership was actually over. Big Cass came down to the ring to confront him, and they worked it out and ultimately reunited with each other. It was a nice moment, followed by a trademark evil moment by Vince when, after fooling the audience, Cass again attacked Enzo, illustrating that this really is over. Not much else new really happened on the show besides the main event, as most of the feuds are already solidified for the pay-per-view. The main event featured a gauntlet match for the number one contender spot for the Raw Women's Championship. A gauntlet match has two competitors starting out in the ring, and once one wrestler wins, another one comes down to face the victor of the match, which just ended until all the competitors have been in the match. This particular match had 6 competitors in total. Nia Jax was a standout as she started the match with Bayley, defeated her, and then went on to defeat Mickie James, Dana Brooke, and Emma before facing final competitor Sasha Banks. Banks was victorious and will face Alexa Bliss in what surely will be the best feud on Raw between the current roster of women. Until they shake up the roster again, this is the best matchup we will get. Moving on to Smackdown Live, this show had the promise of an outstanding program with a women's Money in the Bank rematch and women's title rematch between Lana and Naomi scheduled for the show among other matches. The opening match had the newly reformed tag team, the Hype Brothers, Hype Bros squaring off against the champions, the Usos, in a non-title match. If the Hype Bros won this match, they would be the new number one contenders for the tag belts. The Hype Bros fell short, however, as the Usos were victorious. Next up was the aforementioned women's title rematch. It should also be noted that Rusev has been spotted performing on live WWE house shows, so what is this company waiting for in bringing him back? Would he return on this night to help his wife win the title? Nope. Lana again lost clean, making this feud seem kind of pointless. Later on in the ring, Randy Orton came down to the ring and demanded a title match with Jinder Mahal and that he wasn't moving until he got his wish. Shane McMahon came down to the ring and addressed Orton and granted him a title shot, also adding that Mahal gets to choose the stipulation for the match, though. Mahal comes out and determines that the match will be a Punjabi prison match, which is similar to a steel cage match in that the first person to escape wins. The Punjabi prison is just a bunch of bamboo sticks instead of steel bars, with an extra layer that the steel cage doesn't have. It looks like it will be difficult to see the match inside. Anyways, this matchup for the title will be at the next Smackdown pay-per-view Battleground. Backstage, Daniel Bryan, after speaking with Kevin Owens, decided to have a battle royal next week on SmackDown to determine a number one contender to face Kevin Owens for his United States Championship. And in the main event of the show, after James Ellsworth was banned from the arena, the women would square off again without any interference from him. And yet, Ellsworth during the match found a way to sneak back into the arena and did interfere. This time he wasn't able to grab the briefcase to give it to Carmella. After a series of missed opportunities, Carmella, on her own, managed to climb the ladder and win, giving us the same outcome as the pay-per-view. The show was a bit lackluster after such an exciting start. Alright, that will do it for me, as we've covered all the major events in the WWE this week. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel below if you liked what you heard. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.